Some say he's a technical whiz. Some say he was born in Cornwall. While some say he's on a journey. It's The Journey. And here's your host, David Hackett.
Hi everyone, welcome to another The Journey. Joining us today is a lead scientific researcher at Fellow One Research, and he's pioneered body type science, the 4 body types, since 2003, including creating the only online worldwide science-based health community website, which offers the scientific body type quiz and scientific weight loss programs, basic and advanced. And their website offers free public access to scientific health knowledge base and research. We welcome Marc Nelson. Marc, welcome to The Journey.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. So, as I've always said to guests, it's not about me, it's about you. So tell me about you.
So when I was a young kid, about 8 years old, I was actually a star soccer player on a state championship team. And I began noticing during shirts off soccer practice that my body was very different from my peers. And when I would reference the standard scientific human body anatomy book, you would see the standard human body image with all muscles and muscle mass fully developed. My body didn't look like that, and my peers did. So I was certain that that body type was a real body type, but I didn't have that body type. And as I would go in and see the doctor and they would run my BMI, I was well within my safe BMI because I was such an inactive kid. So no one thought anything about it. When I would ask them, hey, what's up with all this fat all over my body? Because at the time there was no term skinny fat. Nobody would give me any answer, or they would just brush me off because I was well within my safe BMI weight range, and that's all they cared about.
Yeah.
So as I hit 10, 12, 15, and puberty finally hit because I was a late bloomer, more fat grew. And instead of muscle growing, more fat grew. And again, I was well within my safe BMI weight range. And according to mainstream science and medical doctors, when you're well within your safe BMI weight range, you're a body type 1, you have all the muscle and muscle mass fully developed, and that's that. The problem is I didn't. I had skinny fat all over my body where I should have muscle mass. And when you have skinny fat where you have muscle, you're not athletic. And so I had to quit sports because I couldn't play out on the soccer field with people who were like David Beckham, who, if you've seen him with his shirt off, he's a body type 1. He's all muscle and muscle mass. It's why he can run up and down the field all day in terms of soccer, and why he's a pro soccer athlete. I didn't have any muscle, so I couldn't do that. I tried switching to tennis, but I was so weak because I didn't have any muscle that I couldn't hold the racket with one hand. So I had to do a two-handed forehand and backhand, which took away from my ability to excel in the sport. And I eventually quit all competitive sports in general, which led me to college, and I started to look at things more there. But I'll pause here and see if I'm making any sense.
Yeah. So, did you feel ashamed that you couldn't do the things you physically wanted to do?
Great question. Honestly, it wasn't that I necessarily felt ashamed. It was that because I wasn't excelling as I got older, 10, 12, 15 and on, my parents, because the doctor said that I was, normal, I was, had a healthy BMI and everything else was normal. My parents just thought that I wasn't working hard, that I was just a quitter, and they were thoroughly disappointed in me, and that led to me feeling shame about it when, again, I could go to the doctor, and when I was there, I would say, hey, what's up with all this skinny fat all over my body? And obesity is a common thing in our family. It is genetics. And yet no one cared about any of those variables whatsoever. All they cared about was that I was safely within my BMI weight range, and I was normal. But when your parents are thoroughly disappointed in you because you can't excel at something that they think that you should be excelling in, and no one wants to look at the evidence and facts and understand why, then essentially what my parents thought was that I was just a loser who was an underachiever who wasn't working hard enough. And that really had the hardest negative effect on my mental and emotional health, because I worked extremely hard. I was out training every day and jogging miles, and I started weightlifting early to try and put on muscle mass. But when you don't have muscle, where you should have muscle, and you have skinny fat in place, it's very hard to put on muscle, no matter how hard you work in the gym. And anyone out there who has skinny fat, cellulite, loose skin, saggy skin, crepey skin, thin fat, or normal weight obesity knows what I'm talking about, because you've gone to the gym, you've worked very hard, and yet you still have skinny fat of some form on your body, no matter how hard you work. So yes, it most certainly had a negative effect on my mental health, and it eventually led to me feeling shame.
So it says in your notes that you sent me about body type science, there is 4 types. Current mainstream we will touch upon now. So it says current mainstream science and medical doctors' body type standards. 1, the standard scientific human body anatomy book, body type 1, and that's BT1, and body mass index BMI, and then the basal metabolic rate. So it then goes on to say why can't mainstream science and medical doctors' body type standards are inaccurate. Can you explain why?
So when any human being goes to see their licensed medical doctor, those are the 3 standards that you are being held by. The body type 1 that you find in any scientific human body anatomy book, the body mass index, the BMI, and the basal metabolic rate, which is the BMR, and that's the number of calories that you require daily to function in terms of your body. And those standards are not accurate because none of them take into account skinny fat. And again, because the BMI has grown to be such a heavily used and relied on standard by doctors, so long as you're within your safe BMI weight range, you're a body type 1. And there's no discussion about that. And if you are within your safe BMI weight range, you are a body type 1. You are held to that standard of having all that muscle and muscle mass. And again, there's no discussion on that. So again, those standards are not accurate because genetically, there are many people in the world who are not a body type 1. They have never been a body type 1 from day one, from birth. Because of their genetics, they have skinny fat in place of where there should be muscle and muscle mass. And we have hundreds now of scientific body type quizzes up on our website. And all that we have is people who have answered all of our questions, and they tell us, I've never been a body type 1. Not one day of my life have I been a body type 1. Even when I was well within my safe BMI weight range, I wasn't a body type 1. So again, when you go and see your doctor, those are the 3 standards that you're being held to, but none of them take into account skinny fat.
So because I've in recent years I noticed my weight increase, but when I was younger I was always skinny, and people thought it was not me eating properly, which probably, I don't know, probably I wasn't, but the fact is I felt like I was fat at times, but my body, when you look at it, was skinny. So
when you were younger, did you notice skinny fat on your body? Did you look like the standard scientific human body anatomy book body type 1 with all muscle and muscle mass fully developed? And that includes, the visible defined abs, all of it.
Yeah, I had the muscle, and I looked the part, and I got it now. You can see it physically here, but at the time I felt insecure because everyone kept thinking I was skinny. And, I always make a joke about weight nowadays. I say it's not about skinny or fat or super size. I always say genetically modified. So I say I'm in a genetically modified body to suit myself. And I learned those words, genetically modified body, because I knew someone who was obese and he had to lose weight because he was so obese. He was pretty much killing him. But he always said, I'm genetically modified in my body. So you should be genetically modified in your own body, because everyone's genetically modified to their own size.
What is your height?
5'8".
Okay, so you're not necessarily short, but you're not necessarily tall either. So that would actually play into things because, again, if you're a 5'8" and you're a bi-type 1 with all the muscle mass fully developed, then that will be different if in terms of if you're 5'11" or 6 feet and you have all that muscle. And it's possible as well if you're a bi-type 1. When we do our scientific bi-type quiz, we rate things on the quiz relative to a scale of 1 to 10. And if you are a bi-type 1, you're either a 9 or a 10 on that scale to be a bi-type 1 for all 26 vertebrae, the 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 1 sacrum, and 1 coccyx. You can be a 9 or a 10 in terms of development relative to all of those vertebra, because it's a scientific fact that every single one of those vertebra houses a specific set of muscles. And any of those muscles can be underdeveloped to whatever degree. And if you do have some underdevelopment, that technically, according to our quiz, means that you are a 1 to 8 on that scale of 1 to 10. So if you're a 9 or a 10 for all 26, then you're a bi-type 1. So it's possible that you were a bi-type 1 and you still were a 9 on all of those and not necessarily a 10, which means that you're still a bi-type 1, just not a complete full-on bi-type 1, which might explain why you were a bit thinner relative to some of your peers. So is that making sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So it goes on to this, I'm saying skinny fat, which is the normal weight, obesity, cellulite, the thin fat, loose skin, saggy skin, crepey skin. Crepey skin, how would you define? Because obviously everyone associates weight obesity, normal, cellulite, thin fat, loose skin, and saggy skin. But what is crepey skin?
It's a type of rough skin that is likely more common on people who are older, but it's this sort of rough, maybe sandpapery type skin that just doesn't look smooth and natural. It looks, it's just this rough looking skin that if you were to compare it to somebody who has quote unquote normal skin, you would see a clear difference in terms of crepey skin versus normal skin.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go out online, any of your listeners can, and type in crepey skin, and it will come up with some solid images that will give you a better sense of that. In terms of thin fat, it's kind of a combination of all those things. So if cellulite is usually these thin balls or this lumpiness on the that's right under the skin. Thin fat's sort of a combination of cellulite and loose skin and crepey skin. It's this sort of weird fat mass that doesn't really fall into any of those, and so we just came up with the term thin fat to explain it. I've got thin fat on my body still. It doesn't necessarily look like cellulite. It doesn't necessarily look like any of the other forms of skinny fat. So anyways, is that making sense?
Yeah. So, you said about your teens, you couldn't do lifestyles you wanted to do. Did it get more difficult as you reached adulthood, where you reached 18, 21? Did it feel more strenuous on you?
It did. So I was relentlessly bullied because I was so weak and small, and I was an easy target for bullies. And that was everyone, my immediate family, friends, strangers, everyone. And when I got to college, I was determined to not be a victim, and I wanted to figure out why. Why is my body lacking all of this muscle mass? Why am I such a weakling? So I started going to the gym with some friends who were all bi-type 1s. And I started to mimic their workout routines, their diet, their supplements, and I did it all. I did it as far as I'm aware. I did it as identical to what they were doing as I could, because I was there at the gym with them lifting weights. I was there at the cafeteria eating the food. I was buying the supplements that they were recommending, and I did that for several years. And I went from having a sparrow's chest to a raven's chest, just a larger bird chest. And you could see some improvement, but it wasn't like all my friends who were bi-type 1s, who they would lift and they would just become full on ripped and they were just all muscle. And I just couldn't put on muscle that way, at least not as readily as they did. So as I got older, it affected my mental and emotional and physical health more. Physically, when I left college, I took a scientific researcher job at the University of Colorado at Boulder, and I was determined not to become obese. So I worked very hard on staying within my safe BMI weight range. But in the process of doing that, because I didn't have any muscle on my body, I had serious problems with digestive issues and heartburn and headaches, and I just felt miserable. And so I went down to the best doctors, because at the time I had really good health insurance, and they ran me through every battery of tests and sent me back saying, "You're totally normal. We don't know what you're talking about. Here's some Tagamet so that you can deal with your heartburn. Don't come back." And at that point, I gave up on doctors and Western medicine because I felt terrible and no one was listening. No one would listen when I would say, "Hey, what's up with all this skinny fat all over my body?" "I don't know. You're well, then you're safe. Be in my weight range, and that's all that we care about." No one listened. So at that point, I was pretty much at my wit's end, and it's when I began the bi-type science research, because it was all I had left. No one would listen.
And how is the research since you started the research? Has it helped you understand yourself more as well as others?
Very much so. So it really took. I basically sort of dropped out and I moved out into the country, and I began looking at my body and understanding, how do I fix this? And so the first step was understanding the structure of the human body. And again, as I mentioned, there's 26 vertebrae, and I looked at that and said, okay, we know that those are the main structure of the human body, of the spine, along with all the bones, etc. So we're going to break down the actual body types into just the standard body type 1, that same image that you see in any scientific anatomy book. That's a body type 1. There's no vertebrae under developed. All muscle and muscle mass is developed. And again, it can be a 9 or a 10, so it doesn't necessarily have to be fully developed, but it's developed enough to be a body type 1. 0 underdeveloped vertebrae. Body type 2 is 1 to 8 underdeveloped vertebrae, meaning that 1 to 8 are an 8 or less. Body type 3 is a 9 to 17, and the body type 4 is 18 through 26. So once I came to that understanding, and I began to understand, how can I look at the body and really understand it and understand what my body was? I was born in a body type 4. I had 18 to 26 vertebrae that were underdeveloped. It was probably 24 or so, maybe 2 weren't, but I would say that really all of them were. It's tough without an MRI machine to really know, but I was most certainly a body type 4, and the vast majority were underdeveloped relative to having very little, if any, muscle mass whatsoever. So once I understood that, then my next goal was figuring out what is the best diet and exercise and lifestyle for my specific body, because I want to be healthy. That's my ultimate goal, is to be healthy. So I tried every diet and exercise routine, and I finally settled on essentially what is a omnivore vegetarian diet, what we call up on the website a Blue Zone Mediterranean diet. It's sort of a cross between the Blue Zone diets and the Mediterranean diet, but it's a heavily omnivore vegetarian diet, and that seems to work best for me. And then my diet, my exercise, I really enjoy hiking and just long walks, basically. Nothing too strenuous, but I do that regularly every day, 6 days a week. Typically, it was 7 days during the pandemic, and that really helps get my metabolism up. So once I had gotten my diet and exercise and lifestyle, sleep and stress and all that wrangled, but then I at least could understand how to manage the heartburn and the digestive issues and the headaches, et cetera, that were all relative to my body type 4. Then the next step was figuring out, is there a way that I can fix this? So is that making sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So, looking to the future, is this research you're doing going to go to any, obviously I have to mind how I word it politically, but is it going to go to people that will hopefully listen to it and say we want to take note of it? Or is it already in place?
We are definitely working on that right now and taking it to the next level. Our next phase is to do a full website rebuild, because we're well aware that the website is outdated. However, it is fully functional. So up on the website, we have the scientific body type quiz. We have the scientific weight loss program diary. And those are meant to help you, one, understand what your real body type is, your real scientific body type is, and then to help you figure out what is the best diet, exercise, and lifestyle for my specific body type relative to my genetics and metabolism, etc. And that's where the scientific weight loss diary comes into play. And the point of that is to really give people a place where they can track their science-based diet, exercise, and lifestyle data. And that includes images, etc., so you can watch your progress over time. We encourage a pen name, and there's no face images in any of the images, so that you can protect your identity. And you can invite your friends and family for free. They can join the conversation and support your journey. But it's all right there so that you can track it. You can hold yourself accountable. And then there's also the diet, exercise, and lifestyle support team that's part of the advanced diary. You can also buy individual credits, and we in terms of the diet, exercise, and lifestyle support team, we focus on science-based HIMAWS and Google SERP1 links, so that we can bring forth the most accurate science. All that being said, what we're working on now is funding so that we can do a full rebuild on the website. And we are also working on a artificial intelligence app that will help make taking the pictures for the quiz and diary more accurate, so that all in all, we can improve the quality and quantity of our scientific data, which then hopefully our next step after that is to build a research center where we can have MRI machines and doctors, et cetera, and really bring people in and study this on a true scientific level. So is that making sense?
Yeah. So I'll add the links to the sites in what you sent in the description in the bio when I write it up. But is there anything else you want our listeners, viewers, to be aware of? Any advice you want to give them? Any support you want to give them, making them feel good?
So social media is always a huge concern of ours because of all the nonsense that happens up there, all the fake filtered and photoshopped images, and all that people do is talk about the unscientific, debunked, thoroughly debunked mesomorph, endomorph, and ectomorph body types. There's no science behind them. There never was. They're simply arbitrary, subjective shapes that they just don't have any basis whatsoever in science. Please stop using those. Please stop spreading those. Please stop using social media as a place where you are looking for weight loss and body type information. It's all, there's so much nonsense and there's so much misinformation and lies going on. Please stick with the science. And our site is the only body type science in existence. You can go to fellow1.com and learn more about all of it. You can go up on social media and chat with us if you have questions. We're on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. But please stick with the science. And the science is ever evolving. We don't claim to have all of the answers, but we do stick with the science, and we are open to new facts and data as they actually roll in. But we are very worried about all the nonsense that happens up on social media and just in the media in general. I mean, even if you go up on Google and you type in body type, what comes up first is the endomorph, ectomorph, and mesomorph somatotypes, even though, again, they're completely 100% unscientific nonsense. So be careful in what you believe, and please check out fellow1.com to learn more about real scientific body type science.
Marc Nelson, it's been a pleasure talking to you and making your journey our journey.
Thank you so much for having me.
That was The Journey, hosted by Wise Words Imaging, hosted by David Hackett. Be sure to like, subscribe and listen to another journey coming soon. The Journey.
Well, playing a paramedic I always was aware that it was an honour.
The Journey.
I'm just finishing something, so I just want to be polite rather than just be abrupt.
I cannot even imagine how Geraint would have reacted to that.
The Journey.
This is sometimes the best bit of the day.
The Journey.
People need a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, if you know what I mean.
The Journey.
But it has never taken away from my will and determination.
The Journey.
What I realised is I had no idea what I was all about.
The Journey.
But when I was going through depression, dogs have a sixth sense, and I think cats do too.
The Journey. Some say he's a technical whiz. Some say he was born in Cornwall, while some say he's on a journey. It's The Journey.